If everyone could take their seats, please. The chair would like to call to order tonight's regular meeting of the Board of Education, CUSD 201, June 25th, 2019, and roll call, please.
Mr. Armstrong.
Here.
Mrs. Charlton.
Here.
Mrs. Coyle.
Here.
Mr. Price. Mr. Rudy.
Here.
Mrs. Strohmeyer.
Here.
Ms. Wilson.
Here.
Thank you.
We could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is approval of minutes. The first one is May 14th. I have two quick things. On page 2, under the student handbook, the second paragraph should come out because it says the handbook changes will be presented for the board as an action item on the May 14th, at the May 14th board meeting. And so this is the May 14th. So we can take that one off if everyone is okay with that. And then under the student handbook piece, there's a discussion about the elementary, and then it says Mr. Price suggested adding language and Ms. Strohmeyer. I think we should put something in. It was noted that for the high school handbook, the proposed revisions are being removed regarding class ranks, because we didn't say that in here. So, I don't know, we want to do that? Because we go into, then there's two sections where Joel's asking to talk about having student transcripts, the class rank on there as an option, and then Dana, you're asking if we could discuss it at a future meeting, so. Is that okay? Okay. Anyone have anything else? I'll get that to you. The chair will present a motion to approve the minutes of the May 14th, 2019 regular meeting of the Board of Education as amended.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion granted. May 14th closed session. The chair will enter a motion to approve the minutes of the closed session of the May 14, 2019 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carried. May 21st, the chair will enter a motion to approve the minutes of the May 21st, 2019 special meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the closed session of the May 21st, 2019 special meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carried. Are there any public comments? Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Any questions or comments on that? The chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Number 1, personnel recommendations. Licensed staff, Rachel Finnis, is it Finnis? Mm-hmm. 0.8 FTE, instrumental band music teacher, Westmont High School. Kenneth Shum, 0.4 FTE, business teacher, and 0.6 FTE, teacher assistant, Westmont High School. Alyssa Woody, 1.0 FTE, 8th grade special education teacher, Westmont Junior High School. Yasmin, Sabatin, we'll just go with that. 1.0 FTE, speech language pathologist, district-wide. Long-term substitute, Laura Tarnow, 3rd grade teacher, Manning Elementary School. 2, approval of towel service. 3, renewal of student accident insurance. 4, adoption of 2019 through 2020 routine business office resolutions. 5, approval of board travel expenses. 6, approval of additional May 2019 expenditure report. 7, approval of June 2019 expenditure report. And 8, ratification of May 2019 regular payroll.
So moved. Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Stromeyer? Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mrs. Coyle?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, motion carried. Okay, the first item for discussion. Update on elementary standards-based grading and report cards.
Good evening. I'm Mr. Weiler, principal at Miller Elementary School,
Lindsay Peterzak, principal at Manning Elementary School.
and we would like to introduce Mrs. Jill Hawkins, Miller parent, community member, and former PTO president at Miller, and she was also on the standards-based grading committee. So everything's all about timing, and I think the timing of the standards-based report card pilot for last year came at a perfect opportunity for us to really kind of move light years in the direction we want our kids and our teachers to go. The school board approved adoption of a couple new resources, which was very exciting and exactly what our students and teachers wanted. And to go very deep into all the standards that Common Core has put in front of us, moving to a standards-based report card just expedited that process. So we really thank you for allowing us the opportunity to pilot the standards-based change and it was mainly a change for 3rd through 5th, but we really took a couple steps back and really took a focus on everything K-5 and created a really nice alignment. And the teachers were a part of the process, parents were a part of the process, and it was a joint effort. So we offered a lot of opportunities for parents to come in and hear about some of the suggested changes. We offered some talks one-on-one, small group, at parent-teacher conferences. I know one of the pieces of feedback, the conferences weren't long enough for the first round, but I think by the second round of conferences later in the year, both parents and teachers felt they can get through enough of where the kids were at so they can move them forward. But the whole purpose is to increase our communication with a report card vehicle, and I believe it is getting us in the right direction. Some overviews of the changes were that we included learner habits in the new tool, and that helped parents really identify what kind of, thank you. Yeah.
Nadine?
There
Oh,
it is.
there we go.
No, wrong
Got it,
one,
got it,
though.
got it.
It's
Oh,
okay.
that's not, wait, that's not the right.
Right.
Luckily, I didn't get
You
into slide
wanna-
2 yet.
You
so
want to
we're
get,
good.
You
no,
gotta-
no, no.
Yeah,
You're-
you have
Minimize
to-
that. You
yeah,
need to
minimize.
That's the tentative budget. You gotta minimize it and pull it
Unless
down.
you, well,
It
On
says
this.
standards-based grading.
Okay.
Why don't we refresh it
Refresh?
or escape? And then
unless you want to do the report on the tentative budget.
No.
Do the tentative budget. Yeah, that's great.
That would be
We'll do the
interesting.
report card. Well, it's fine. Make perfect sense.
Mess them up.
Can't X out of it. It's not pulling the screen at all. Tick. What screen is it pulling?
The tentative budget,
No, I know, but where is that down here?
I believe
It's
it's,
the PowerPoint. Close the.
Tentative budget is on a flash drive, right?
Yeah.
How do you guys have your presentation?
oh, here we go.
There we go.
Look at that.
Hey.
Mess them up.
It's an extension screen. All right, so we're just gonna have to look over here.
One of the right, present. Sorry, over top right. Share.
Right there. That's how I get to
There
it.
you go.
All right,
All right.
so an overview,
That, Kim.
I'll repeat a little bit of the overview of the standards were, we included learner habits, which is very important for parents and teachers to kind of identify where to give students feedback based on the behaviors that they're presenting in class, whether they're getting homework done, they're on task, they're keeping their emotions in check. So those are the things that we wanted to really increase the communication on with the new tool. Not reporting on skills as they are assessed for mastery. So some of the, based on timing of the year, items are assessed for mastery during different quarters. So not everything's assessed in quarter one, and not everything's assessed in quarter two. And that's the biggest change our teachers made as they reflected on the at the end of the year, is when dividing up all the major standards and making sure there's a balance from first quarter to fourth quarter, so the kids don't feel over-assessed every single time we're getting towards the end of a grading period. And we're still at 4 for the elementary. So we got first quarter, first semester, third quarter, and then the second semester. And then the elimination of the letter grades in third through fifth. So that was the other big trial that we were trying to see if students were getting more feedback and better feedback in third, fourth, and fifth to improve their grades and their scores and their learning. And the teachers, 100% at both schools, are on board with looking at using the standards-based grading tool as a way to give feedback when you compare standards-based grading to letter grades alone. So they're all very supportive of making sure we can identify those pieces, giving a meets, an approaching, or a do not meet at that time on a standard, because it allows us to better communicate where they are and really hone in on interventions or enrichment opportunities if kids are showing mastery at an early level. We have 3 rating systems that a meets, which is the highest category. That means they are meeting the level that the state is asking us to teach and assess. There's an approaching, which they're not there yet, but they're not completely far off the target. And then there is do not meets, which means there's some work to be done, and that's allowing us as building interventionists, as administrators, to really dive into what's going on and what's the why behind why is that student not learning, and possibly putting some plans in place to meet those students' needs. Committees met at least 3 times over the course of the year. A couple times on campus, a couple times off campus. We really tried bringing the groups together to really get some feedback, put together presentations, talking points, and really getting an ear of what the community, the school community is saying about the pilot. Teachers appreciate giving the extra level of feedback, and the discourse that's happening in the classrooms is elevated because of that. Some of the strengths that the report card has kind of shown are that students and families receive more feedback together to kind of talk about those items, whether it's at the dinner table or whether we're working with their children at the desk at home, doing homework, taking them to the library, or just having better conversations with teachers in the building, and consistently aligning amongst the grade levels. We currently have a phenomenal K-5 alignment, not only with the resources, but with language that the resources are using, which has just heightened the level of the work that our kindergarten and 5th grade teachers are doing, and everyone that's in the middle. We've worked very hard, and the standards reporting tool has just expedited where we would be if we didn't have this with the 2 new resources. So it's really a good blend of 2 new math and reading resources mixed with the standards, allowed the teachers really to dive a little bit deeper into what it is that we're holding the students accountable to learn. So we, Mrs. Peterzak will go over, we surveyed some community members, and we have some data to share.
So we did a lot of informal conversation throughout the course of the year, as Mr. Weiler was talking about, through parent workshops and one-on-one conversations. No news is good news in terms of we didn't get a lot of pushback of asking questions throughout, so feeling as though parents understood and then would reach out either to us or teachers if there were clarifying questions. The committee came up with a survey for the end of the year to get some more consistent data to hear where can we go in the next phase of standards-based reporting if the pilot was approved to move forward, which is what we hope for this evening. So we asked 4 questions. The first 3 are up on the board here, and we definitely found that parents do understand the different reporting and the why of it, which is really the most crucial when you're making any change. They understood the benefits of that. Where we saw some need for improvement was those second 2 questions of understanding really, was it effective? How can we make it more effective in the communication? And that results a lot from the conversation they were having. We needed more time in the fall for this big shift in parent-teacher conferences. That makes a lot of sense. This is a huge evolution from when we were students ourselves, and so the need for parents to have that ongoing understanding and learning of this shift is really important. So what we did was, so we found that most parents obviously understood the difference and that they agreed that it is effective in communicating their learning progress. The next step was asking, what could we do to improve? So we took their feedback and grouped into categories where we saw a lot of the same responses over and over, and we shaped them as questions for ourselves as administrators, for the standards-based committee moving forward, and then also for teachers when they're thinking about working with students in the classroom. So first, how can parents use this information to help their kids? Oftentimes they're coming to that parent-teacher conference saying, okay, well, what does this mean? What can I do at home? And so being able to provide a framework for both the teacher, the parent, and the student to have some walking out the door. Here are 1 or 2 things to really work on using this report that we've provided. The report does a great job of being specific, and then the next step is, okay, how does that look in my household? Number 2, how can teachers and parents communicate more with regards to the shifts with reporting? So that's just that ongoing process that I was referring to. And really, like you see, 29 responses. We had, over the course of workshops, I would say the same parents coming in to get that information. So how do we reach more parents that don't necessarily have the opportunity to come in and sit through a workshop, but want this information? And so how do we reach out to them so they can understand those shifts? Third, is there a way to focus the reporting on only standards assessed during the quarter? So the way it lays out is if a standard isn't reported during that quarter, there was still a score that was put in there. We were just trying to be consistent as we were learning, and that makes a lot of sense. I want to know as a parent, what did this grade level focus on and how did they do? And then if we did it the next quarter, did they improve? Did they maintain cumulatively that score? So that's really just an easy way to read the report card. So once again, as a parent, how can I focus on 1 or 2 things at home to help my child? And then the last question is, what if my students are meeting the standards early in the school year? So when we talked about how we set up the reporting, and instead of using letters, we went to 3 categories, which was working towards, does not meet, and then meets. So the exceeds came up in conversations, and we don't, as a committee, feel that that's off the table. What we really want to focus on, and our backwards design of looking at PARC and IAR data shows that we want to make sure the majority of our students are meeting, and that's what our data shows. The majority of students are meeting those standards. In order to put in an exceeds category, which I would say is 10% or less of our 3rd through 5th grade right now based on our data. So if we want to make that shift, we want to do it with fidelity. And so what does an exceeds look like? So we are in the process of looking at all of our assessments from classroom through state, and how do they define excellent? How do they define exceeds? There is not a clear-cut answer, and so when we make a move towards exceeds, we want to make sure we do that appropriately, and it lines up with the state, with our common assessments, down to what's happening in the classroom. Steps for the 2019-2020 school year is really answering and working through those questions. One big thing is we need to finalize the standards for reporting. So like we talked about, what standards are assessed in which category. And then what we really talked about is there are walking out the standards. There's a long list, if you go math all the way through social science and science, a long list of standards that are expected. And to do that with fidelity, so to assess a minimum of 3 times, and then to go back and reassess as needed is a real challenge for all teachers, and to do it with fidelity. So what we're looking at is, for each content area, what are the walking out the door essential standards for, let's say, 4th grade? And helping parents, at least as a starting point, helping parents understand these are the major concepts to focus on, because like we said, a lot to look at on a report card is overwhelming. If we can focus on a couple of areas per grade level, that would be really beneficial. The next piece, and we made a little shift in the PowerPoint just because it made more sense to include it after, so the next slide shows this. It's a rubric scale to help parents identify what does it mean to be working towards, what does it mean to be a meets the standard. I'm going to flash forward real quick. So what we've already started to lay out this summer is looking at, and we just chose some math standards. On the left side, you'll see that is a essential standard that's identified by the 3rd grade team for mathematics. And so we wrote down specifically what would be the criteria in a parent and student-friendly language of does not meets, working towards, and then meets. And then finally, we are looking at a Spanish version for our dual language classrooms, making sure that they have the same reporting available to their families as well. So I'm going to ask a couple questions to our parent because she has the perspective of sitting in on those conferences and going through this process not only from the lens of hearing teacher and admin perspectives, but also being in it as a parent. So if you could if I could ask you two questions or let's just start with the first. How do you feel as a parent the standards-based reporting helped you or didn't help you as a parent in guiding your students' progress at home?
I think that the shift to the new report card is.
Could you step a little bit closer to the microphone?
It's really, the shift has been good because there's so much more detail and explanation about what is being assessed. So there's all these different line items versus just a letter grade, which, I mean, I think that's sort of a gray area between subjectivity and what exactly went into that letter grade. So I think that the line items, each spelled out individually, are key. I also enjoy seeing the social and emotional breakout at the end, because I think that's just as essential as the scholastic part of the report card.
Mm-hmm. Was there anything that we missed from a parent perspective of things to continue to work on in perfecting and making sure we have a very cohesive and strong report card?
I think the rubric explanation, I think that's going to be a key to understanding the report card. Each line item, I mean, there's a lot of information.
Mm-hmm.
So spelling out that in, like you said, in terms that we can understand, and not acronyms and stuff, is essential, I think. To each line item, I mean, really, I know it's a lot of work, but I think it's key. So I think going forward, just working with that, and then, like you said, the dual language aspect.
So with this knowledge, there might be some more questions, but at the end of this, our question for you all is, would we be able to move forward from the pilot and implement this in our K-5 for the 2019-2020 school year?
I actually asked Kevin if we have to vote on this. Are we?
I didn't see it on the action item.
It's not an action item.
Not an action item, no.
So we could do, I'm throwing you under the bus here. So there's,
Sorry?
we could do informal discussion right
Right,
now
right.
and put it as an action item for the July meeting. So
Did
first,
not mean to put you on the spot.
that's okay, because I did it right back. So do you want to ask questions first and then do that, or whatever, however you want to?
Anybody have a comment?
My only comment was the survey results you had were from 29 respondents, you said? Mm-hmm. And so I think the results are great because at the worst level, you're still over 65% approving of it, which is awesome. And I like this idea a lot, and I like the rubric that you showed. I guess my only question is, I'm fine if we continue forward with it, but I would like to see if there's a way to get more respondents to that survey. It may be integrated as part of conferences.
Yeah.
So that you kind of have a captive audience and try to get, quick 2 questions answered, or those 3 questions answered fast for people walking in, walking out, just to get a more holistic view of the entire community.
Yeah, I appreciate the presentation. Thank you for mentioning the Spanish version for the dual language families. I think that's really important. I personally think it's been awesome. Our teachers did a great job of understanding the program, explaining it, going through it during conferences. To Jill's point, love the level of detail we got in terms of feedback on what exactly the students should focus on. I'm 100% a fan of continuing.
I have 2 things. So following up on something that John just said. So where there are, in your surveys, disagree, is that where you come up with what are the next steps? Is that how you come up with, like, if you've got 31% that disagree with something, is that where you come up with, what do you?
The
gonna-
fourth question was for them to provide feedback, which was awesome.
Okay.
The people who did fill it out did a really good job of sharing some specific details from the parent lens. So what we did was look for trends within that.
Okay, good. Because the other thing that I wanted to suggest, and not that you don't know this, but you guys just took a lot of time to put this presentation together. And just to remind people, we record these meetings. So you can always reference and tell people that they can look at this, because your slide presentation is on board docs as well as your presentation. So one way of reaching out to other people is, I mean, that's one of the things we like to really do here, is to have more than just, you know, voting and stuff, giving that information to the parents. And like one of the things you were saying is, how do we reach out to the parents? So you could do a plug for the board meetings.
I have a
Anyway, just to follow up, I agree that I like where this is going. I think it's really good to get feedback from the teachers. What can I do as a parent? So,
There's two things I really like the changes, and I'm curious if these changes will be ready for the fall report card, the changes you guys are talking about. But two things that I agree were needed to be made were just putting the standards that were being assessed that quarter. As a parent, there's just there's a tremendous amount of information. Just focusing on essential standards per grade, I think, is a great next step for this. And the rubric, defining what, MET is. So I think that will be helpful to parents to how they can help students at home as well. So will that be on the first report card? Will those changes be ready for the first report card going home next school year, is my question.
So cohesively, we have math, because that's where we started with a lot of our conversations last year. So we have essential standards. That was the example that you have. And our goal is, but I don't know if we are at a place where we can say ELA will be finalized, but the goal would be for math to have the essential standards with the rubric for each grade level ready for fall.
Okay. Now, is the committee going to continue to meet next year, and does that include parents? As far as this evolves the second year, will parents have the opportunity to give feedback on that in a committee format?
This is my personal opinion, you
Yeah.
can also share too, getting people together on a day when we have so many commitments was difficult, but I like the ideas of finding captive audiences.
Yeah.
When do we have most of our parents in where they can provide that feedback? Because that is really important in that conversation. And then if we felt we needed to come together again, it's to get parents, teachers, and admin all at the same table at once. It becomes a challenge.
Yeah.
And so if the goal is really to get feedback, we have teachers, and that's an ongoing part of our school improvement plan, but getting those parents, like you said, 29 out of 400, 500 families is a small percentage. In the same respect, we didn't get the calls of saying there's extreme frustration, but more just clarifying and understanding. So I think that'd be a great opportunity to really move forward and still continually ask for suggestions and how can we improve.
Not only that, kind of get in front of anything that does pop up as an issue. We'd definitely bring that committee back in for some follow-up, and maybe there would be one more follow-up before we start the process of changing everything. But also asking for some fluidity and some flexibility as we build this year, making sure there will be some opportunities for us to tweak things to make it even better, because we know we're not going to get 100% right even this next year, but as long as we know it's a journey and we can keep changing things for improvements, I think we're moving in the right direction.
I think the big piece is accountability. At the end of the day, we have to cycle back and make sure that what we're doing makes sense, and we're holding ourselves accountable for that. So we've invested ourselves in making sure that happens.
any other questions?
Judy, you have anything? I've got one thing. I'm fine with the changes and everything. I've heard from the elementary parents that they, at least the ones that are at the board table, they seem to like it. I am just very concerned about basing a decision when you just said it yourself, there was 400 or 500 or how many families available. You only got 29 responses. I mean, the percentages look great, but are those the real numbers? I don't know. I don't know. I would really have liked to have somehow maybe at the conferences this year that we just had, maybe we should have been asking those captive audiences then, what did they think of these changes so far? I'm not sure we have the, I don't want to say full opinion, because you never get the full opinion, and I know that at all the meetings I've ever been to over all the years, it seems like you see the same 7, 8, 10 people. So am I basing my decision on the same 7, 8, or 10 people who really want this, who really like it? Or am I really basing my decision on the community saying, yes, I'm okay with this? Now, I will also say at the same time, I've received no emails like you. I've received no phone calls from parents saying, what's this? But I haven't gotten the other ones either saying, hey, this is great, I love it, okay? So you're asking me to base my decision on 29 people answering a question, and, you know, the stats look nice on 29. I'm just not sure everybody is understanding and what's on the page, okay?
And
I have no problem with it. I think it looks great, and hearing the parents that are involved, I'm very happy with that. I would certainly, I would really like to know that we've, you know, maybe we could do something over the summer to ask the parents in an email survey or something to give us a little bit more feedback than just the same people that are in the room, you know, making the decisions. So that's all I would add.
I think it's important, like you said, in the fall of this year, to really reinvest in asking us again, because if we were to give it in the fall year that we started, there was a lot of learning curve for both sides. So I think there actually would have been a sway towards because there's not a full understanding. And as we talk about things take 3 to 5 years for full implementation, I think if we did that yearly check and using this as 29 is the lowest number we should have, and really work on increasing that number of respondents is really important. So I like that suggestion of going in the fall.
Right, but you're asking me to vote on this and make this change based on this information, and I'm not comfortable doing that. But I'm only one of 7. I'm only one of 7, so.
A part of the earlier discussion on this is not only is a trend in Illinois, it's research-based best practice on how we assess and give feedback to others. It just, you know, it's small tweaks. We're trying to get our kids ready for college and career and being able to get in a job and get critical feedback from others. And it's really all about the feedback piece. And so it's when you have 10 items in math that you're giving students feedback on over a course of a year, and it's very prescribed based on a rubric, it's a lot more information than we're giving when we give a student a letter grade, when it could mean a wide variety of things. So it is moving in the direction of best practice. There's research out there, but I do believe doing a better job with the parent survey and communication piece, we definitely can improve on that part. But it's definitely moving in the direction of best practice in K-5 education, for sure.
Can you tell me how many, oh, I'm sorry, does somebody else have a question first?
Go ahead.
Can you tell me how many other school districts in, I don't know, DuPage County, Cook County, the general greater Chicagoland area, on elementary level at least, are doing this? I know the colleges aren't. I mean, I was just at one today and they're not doing this, so.
We have collected data. I don't know if we had it here,
Almost all.
but it's
Okay,
definitely
well,
a majority,
Yeah.
If
definitely
you
more than
could
50%.
please send me that, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay? Or the whole board, I should say. Send it to the
Yeah.
whole board.
Did the survey go out to all parents?
Yes.
And you only got 29 responses. It was by email, right? I got that email. So it was emailed out to everyone, but you only got 29 responses.
Several times.
Several times.
I think sometimes, I think the captive audience is really important. I communicate on a weekly basis with parents. That is a typical number. Actually, it's a little higher than I usually get for responses on feedback. And so finding opportunities where parents are in the door, that they can quickly respond to something. It's same with 5 Essentials data of finding the captive audience to give them, and this is even shorter, so it'd be less than 5 minutes, hopefully, to provide their insights.
Just to layer on that a little bit, I mean, I've already said I'm a fan, very supportive of it. I do think the captive audience is important for everybody, but I think specifically for our Spanish-speaking families to make sure we're getting their feedback when they're live with us. I think that's, I would venture to guess that they're probably underrepresented in these numbers that are captured via an email survey. So that would be great to see when we go through the next round. Just almost the demographic of who's responded.
Kevin, we have the ability to do kind of on-the-spot surveys with groups of people.
Yeah.
You know, it wouldn't be horribly difficult, I would think, at some kind of gathering of students and parents and families for whatever reason, whether it's a concert or a award ceremony or whatever, to quickly do that they all walk in with smartphones because they all want to take pictures of their kids. So it wouldn't be hard to put something like that up and take 5 minutes at the beginning, because that's a really quick and easy way to get something.
Maybe a Kahoot
Yeah.
Do
survey.
you still do beginning of the year orientation?
Yep. New family orientation?
No, like for
Curriculum
everybody?
night? Mhm.
Yeah,
Yep, that would be,
Oh, that's a good idea.
yeah, and what,
That'd be the
just
perfect place.
what's your ballpark as to the percentage of families show up for that?
more than 80%.
Okay,
Yeah, I
so,
was gonna say 90, but I don't wanna,
okay, well,
Miller is like 60 to 70.
that could be a thought, because they're still in September, not having an elementary kid for a little while, that's still in September, right? Okay, that could be a thought. I have two questions that come up, so this might also, I'm gonna ask this question. I might sound ridiculous, me, but do all the parents know that we've been piloting this? Or is it just a small group? You know what I mean? This isn't something we're just gonna say in the fall, hey, we're doing this new thing, right? Do people know? Have they seen?
Literature has gone home via hard copies.
Okay.
And then I do believe majority of the communication is electronic, or a couple phone messages, automated phone messages went out about during conferences, set up a time to talk with Mrs. Peterzak or myself when you're in the building if you have questions about the new reporting system. So we can definitely amp the communication piece up, but every family has received either multiple electronic messages, a few hard documents, the rubric that was shared after, right before conferences to understand what it looks like. It's not the rubric we had this year was just something we put together for some alignment. It's not 100% aligned, but it's a rubric based on every standard in Common Core. And in our report card, not every standard's in there. It's the power standards and a good chunk of the very, very important ones that we want every student to kind of master before they move to the next level.
Because just from what we're talking about here, again, being a parent, sometimes you kind of think, oh, that's something that they're discussing. You know what I mean? That's something somebody's discussing. So I'm also thinking about, we have registration coming up, and every family has to come to registration. So maybe some form of, hey, by the way, we are going to change the way we grade, and we are potentially starting this year, and maybe put something like this in a packet to give it to people. I mean, I'm just trying to think of ways to get more people, like, this is what we're talking about.
so on curriculum night of this past year, we shared with parents both in respective buildings before they met with their teachers, the PowerPoint we shared with you all. So they really understood the why, that it was a pilot. Here's how we're going to look. We actually talked about the timeline, which is
Okay.
how we remembered we were presenting in June, that we wanted to do a follow-up. So from the beginning, I feel like we have provided them with the base during a captive audience. The feedback is definitely something, but I think registration is almost 100%. So that's where you're gonna get the most. I think that'd be
Yeah.
a really good idea of just informational of here's where we're at, here's where we're moving towards.
And I would suggest, as being a parent who totally missed something last year, somebody goes like this, just to the parents, even the parents who've been around for a while, because there's a lot of stuff going on there. That, to me, I think would be really, have everybody sign off, no, just something to get it in people's hand, like, because, when you go to registration, you're kind of ready for the school year, you're starting to think about it. That's just a thought to maybe get that.
Can I ask one more question? As this was a pilot, this was third through fifth, right? So during,
K through 5.
oh, no, this year was K through 5? So during this pilot period, were the students getting both the rubric and a letter grade for that? So it was basically a flip of the switch. So my question is, if we're gonna continue this or expand this, should we maintain it as a pilot program until it's ready to roll out 100%? In other words, we had year one to kind of, more than dip our toe in the water, but year number 2 can continue on as a pilot with a full, as the full boat of you know, the reporting comes together, and then a year from now, we can decide with hopefully more responses from the parents, if we want to, you know, if it's something you want to continue to move forward with at that point.
It's more data,
Yeah.
too. I mean,
Data collection, and more, you know, it just gives us more of a foundation for a decision, and
Yeah,
more of a
doesn't rush
foundation to,
anything.
yeah, and more of a foundation to make those tweaks and changes that you were talking about,
Yeah.
too.
Absolutely.
I have one last question, kind of following up on something Gary said. So, and I don't know if this question is exactly for you. So when we talk about this, is this something we're thinking about doing in the other grades, like junior high and high school?
The junior high is considering it. High school is, you know, if you have a high school student,
Well,
it's a
that's-
little bit different animal because they still have to provide information
Okay.
to colleges.
That's where I was going with
So-
it, because I was wondering if
A little bit different.
we're doing that.
Yeah.
And even in junior high, to some degree, right?
A little bit, a little
I
bit.
mean-
It's not as dependent on,
Yeah.
you know. with the
Theoretically,
high
this
school.
is all really good for, you know, giving information. But it did dawn on me that,
Right,
that
right.
we can't do that really in high school,
Right now, no,
right now.
yeah.
It
Unless
would be hard to put the
universities
rubric,
change what they're
Right.
looking for and.
right,
yeah.
on your transcript, that
Yeah,
would be,
right.
yeah, okay. Okay, so, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any other questions? So so maybe what we can think about is next meeting, we can have a discussion following up on what we talked about here and have it as an action item.
Sure.
Maybe with another year, if people like the idea of another year pilot with a letter in that. And
Sure.
does that sound good? I'm talking to the board members now. Is it?
Yeah, well, I definitely like John's idea of extending it out another year for data, that's all.
Yeah.
Make sure that we get into communication with more parents, I mean, that's all,
Yeah,
okay?
yeah. I like that idea too. Okay, so does that sound good for us? Okay, does that sound good?
Yeah, because that really doesn't hold us back with moving forward,
No.
so I think it's a win-win.
Okay,
That's really.
so we'll put that on the agenda for the July meeting. Okay, thank you. And don't forget to tell everybody they can watch this too. Comfort of their own home. Okay. The next item on the agenda, transition from NWEA, see, here we go with the ABC, MAP to iReady assessment. Who's doing that? Oh,
Lindsay and Tim.
okay, I was gonna say,
I'm so
okay,
worried about logging out.
okay.
Memo
Oh,
on
yeah,
the
memo.
change from NWA map, which CUSD 201 has a history of administering at least 2 times a year.
Can you just stop for 1 second, as long as we're talking about changing?
Yeah.
Could you tell people what all those NWEA, I think people know what MAP is, but
Sure,
what are
this
we?
is the company that makes
Yeah.
the map assessment. NWA is associated with the measure of academic progress.
Measure of academic progress. Okay, good, thank you.
So our students in kindergarten, so we do have information from K-5, from the junior high level, so Mr. Jonek and Mrs. Quattrone, and also at the high school level, on how we have used MAP for a good number of years. And due to some fumbling into some new resources and having some alignment with the same type of diagnostic called iReady with the elementary Ready Math program, there is 100% complete alignment with what the math test does and gives teachers to help improve instruction and create individual learning platforms. We did a pilot of the iReady assessment, which is just a similar tool to MAP, but we only did the pilot in math for the first 3 quarters of the year. And we compared the math iReady data with the MAP data that we're compiling kindergarten through 5th grade. We noticed that there's some similar trends with the kids that are scoring in the upper quartile, in the typical range, and in the lower quartile. So the kids that would need some intervention, those that would need some enrichment, and those that are doing exactly what the curriculum and the teaching is supposed to do. So with the idea that we do not want to over-assess our kids and have them take 2 math assessments or diagnostics every time during we have 3 benchmarks during our school year, beginning, winter, and end. We really wanted to focus on what is going to be in the best interest of our students, our teachers, and making our curriculum come to life even more. And over the course of the year, we definitely had 100% of our teachers agree that the iReady math diagnostic gave them more details, more opportunities for learning, and better reporting for themselves and parents as they talked about what areas their students were achieving well in, as well as not achieving so well. So we are looking at, because it's a funding issue as well, we can't assess our students using iReady because it costs money, and we don't want to assess our students in MAP because that costs money as well. We were looking to consolidate to one platform, and that platform would be the iReady platform. The last quarter of the year, we both Miller and Manning, most of our students had access to take the reading component, which took half the amount of time that MAP takes in both math and reading. So that's another attractive tool, and it gives a very similar comparison in terms of percentile and score that MAP gives. So in the half the amount of time, our students are taking a reading and math assessment that gives them a score very comparable to what MAP has given us over the course of the last decade. iReady is also part of the company that we purchased our math resource from. So when I say there's complete alignment, if a student receives a score, the minute they're done taking their test, it creates a 2 to 3 month platform where they're independently learning 10 minutes a day or 45 minutes a week on activities that is geared towards their learning platform. MAP cannot do that for us. So that's one of the really nice, attractive components of iReady. And the reporting is just a lot easier and a lot nicer in terms of sharing information, looking to see where their trends are, compiling differentials. So we're looking at eliminating MAP and moving towards the iReady math and reading assessment. The junior high is also in the process of doing the same because iReady was something that could meet all their needs, from intervention to enrichment to all the blocks they have scheduled in their school. In the high school, if you look in the memo, they really used it for a small portion or a small percentage of their student population to begin with, so they weren't even using it as a diagnostic tool for all their students in ninth grade or sophomore year.
So this is something the whole district wants to do,
Correct.
Right.
move from MAP
Right.
for this upcoming school year?
For the upcoming school year.
Okay. Do we, and I think maybe we talked about this one point, that, every time something changes, how do you estimate if there's growth? Is that something that, as a district, we can do?
Say it again, if they're,
Like when, I'm just kind of thinking out loud about like Kevin's state of the district. You always look to see growth and all that kind of stuff. And every time something changes, it's hard to assess whether there's
There's
growth.
a positive impact.
Yeah, like, is there growth with the students? So with another change, is there, you know what I mean? Like, is there going to be a correlation to be able to tell if that is happening?
So we have, hopefully I'm answering the question correctly. We have the last decade of MAP data that we can look at and track by student. So if there is a student that's in second grade right now and they took MAP this year, next year when they take iReady, there's a correlation chart to show exactly where they would be at that point of the year if they were taking the MAP assessment, but give them an iReady score.
Yeah,
or
that's-
reverse, or give them iReady score and predict what they would get in MAP. So there's already a correlation chart to kind of go with the longitudinal data that we have. the benefit is it's half the amount of time for a student to sit and get the same score, and they're getting very similar questions. And the one thing that is very unique about the MAP assessment that we've been taking for a long time is it changes based on you getting a right or wrong answer. If you get a right answer, it gets harder. And the same thing with iReady. It's kind of a similar model. Students really haven't noticed a difference, with the exception of every time they get a brain break, every about 10 minutes, they get a brain break, they get a game, and everyone in kindergarten through 5th gets kind of like a timeout from the test, and then after they're done playing the game, they get back on the test, and it's more K-5 appropriate, especially for our youngsters that need that brain break to really do their best on the assessments, for us to really figure out where they are and where to push them.
I like the thought of, like you were saying, to align it with the curriculum and like what you're talking about today in talking about like an individual student. So if they're lacking in an area, it gives an automatic. So
Yep.
that I think is great. I just was kind of concerned about like how do we report as a district, because the minute you do something, it changes, and so it's hard to look at all that. But if there's a correlation piece,
Yes.
that sounds good.
How much less time does it take, just out of curiosity? And is it just less questions, or is it just?
It is less questions. It gets to the end point in a shorter amount of time. The thought behind iReady is that they don't need to have 60, 70 intense questions or a battery of long passages to get a student to get a score in the Common Core standards that we're measuring. So they pride themselves on a shorter assessment with more grade appropriate responses to what they're taking.
And a shorter time frame for the assessment is, I would assume, obviously, there's only so many hours in the day to be a student, and we don't want to spend it all doing testing.
Yeah.
But also, I would imagine it would probably end up being better received by students in general if it's less of a test.
Yeah,
to be
the
worried
fatigue
about.
time is a factor.
Fatigue and the stress.
Yep, stress.
I have two questions. One is, what's the cost difference between using MAP and using iReady? And we might not be able to answer that today, but if we're thinking of moving this as a district, is there what's the cost difference between that? And the second is, I know MAP is now available in Spanish. Is iReady available in Spanish for our native Spanish-speaking students?
In math, it will be ready this year.
Okay, I
First
know
time
MAP is
available.
just coming out in
Just coming
Spanish.
out with the ELA portion.
Okay. So math iReady will be in Spanish.
Math will be in Spanish.
Is there any word on when the language arts would be?
No, but I've had many conversations with our dual language team about using a normed item test to measure the Spanish proficiency, and we're still, even if MAP did have this Spanish component and it's either good or great, they don't know if it would be the best tool to measure what they need. They want to measure Spanish proficiency. They have enough in their classroom to measure comprehension skills. They have enough in their classroom to measure language arts standards in Spanish. They need something to measure where they're at proficiently in Spanish, just like we have many tools for the English component. So there's a couple ideas out there, and we're still navigating through that piece.
I'm not so worried about the dual language students learning Spanish that are native English speakers. I'm worried more so, or focused more so on our English as a second language students, maybe at Manning, that are not in dual language classrooms being tested in their native language, if that's most appropriate for them.
In that case, it wouldn't be the most appropriate because you want to test them in the language that they're learning.
Gotcha.
Yeah. That makes sense. And then you asked a question about cost.
Yeah.
So there's no additional cost. We've factored it in as a part to our budget and the budget that comes from the district for benchmark testing. But part of what's great, and there's a good example at the junior high. Right now, there's MAP testing, and then they purchase something called Study Island, which is in the memo. It really talks about that frustration of, okay, we get this data, and then we try to align through Study Island. So it's two separate purchases that they're making, and now it's in one cost. So we're using one aligned program versus two separate. So it's not going to be additional.
I
I have a question. Can you talk a little bit about how these test scores are used for purposes other than evaluating our students and our programs? Like, I'm thinking about externally, do we use them for grant requests, reporting to the state? Is there any other purpose other than evaluating our students? And if the answer is yes, then are these two tests viewed equally to those external sources?
So they don't have to be reported out to the state. They're all
Okay.
internal within a district.
Okay.
I just looked at our alignment just to do a quick check because we had our iReady training this morning, or just Ready training in general. And the correlation between the iReady results for math and the preliminary IAR results are right on par. Now it's 1 year and it's preliminary results, but in terms of alignment with our state assessment, it looks like it's solid.
Okay.
The IER is the old park, I think for 3-4 years, park. It was ISAT, then park, now it's assessment of readiness. So
Another acronym.
Another
That's-
acronym to memorize.
That's what I'm talking about.
And do we know of other districts that are moving in this direction as well, away from MAP and into a different assessment? I mean, I'm all for less time testing, 100%.
The fact is, everyone has a diagnostic tool they use, and then there's probably 5 to 10 out there that meet the needs of every district, just what their comfort level. And the comfort level for us is it meets a variety of needs and it gets to the same. The MAP piece is awesome and it's rich with data, but it connects with the student platform. It connects,
Yeah.
our PLCs are gonna be amped up because that's, MAP is normally something we talk about at least 3 times a year intensely at PLCs.
Yep.
Building wide, someone's really making progress in a standard, it's gonna show on the reports for iReady. They have conversations, what are you doing that I'm not doing? And then they work on improving their strategies or the way they're teaching. So it definitely opens up a dialogue with strategies, instruction, differentiation, taking things to the next level. What are we doing to enhance those that aren't getting it? Because we have a pretty good trend of data that shows over and over and over they're getting it, or maybe they had a real high spike and then they came back down to a typical level. Like, we could see those things over time. And so what we like looking at is after someone takes it 3 times, we have some trends to look at, and that's kind of what we've been focused on this year.
And I think when MAP came out a long time ago, it was something that no one had, so everyone bought into it. And then they kept having those add-ons to keep up with other companies who just made it a little better. And I think we're at that point that it's intuitive for teachers, it'll be intuitive for parents, and it's definitely intuitive for students.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to make that shift. And even though we love MAP and we love what it can offer at all those different levels, we got to step back and listen to those stakeholders who are saying there's something better out there.
So, is this something we are going to approve? Is this something the board needs to approve again, or is this?
This is something they're looking for feedback from the board?
Yeah, that's, and then is that what the next step is? Similar to the report card? Is it something that you're gonna be coming to us with, or is this just happening?
No, we can, at the next meeting, ask the board for.
Okay, is that? Maybe it's another thing to add to your packet.
Does it affect waiting for board's approval? Does it affect your ability to move forward until our next board meeting?
We are prepared to give either of the
Okay.
2 diagnostics this year. It just, I think it's a cost factor, with whether contracts and if things need to be paid in time before the school year begins. But we do give the diagnostic within 7 days of the school year starting.
So there is,
So who do we ask that question to?
because
Meeting?
there's a package that we purchase for math.
K-5 is for purchase the package, and that includes the curriculum and the student materials. The assessment comes with that package. So, this discussion about the assessment is information to let you know, that this is the direction that we're doing with our students because, well, there's 2 things. Number one, it's a good decision because of the factors that these folks have told you is that when you're providing all these assessments to the students, we have to use the assessment that is giving us the information that we can act on. There's actionable data. So based on the fact that they've given both assessments last year, iReady is the one that is more actionable, more aligned. It provides direct correlation to the state testing. The test items are written in, or developed or designed in the same sort of interface as the state testing. The standards are the grade level standards and not goal structures that go outside those grade level standards. So for all those reasons that we've talked about, when we look at those assessment methods, iReady it works. It works for us. It works for the teachers. It's actionable data. It makes sense. And by the way, it comes with the program, where MAP is a separate cost. When the junior high, during the discussions as a leadership team, the junior high said, "What is this iReady you speak of?" So we got together a team of us and discussed it as a team with the junior high leadership, and that's why they move forward with they have an arrangement with the vendor. They're doing a pilot, which is a lesser cost. They're getting the materials and the student materials and the curriculum materials kind of for free because they're getting the online version. But they're getting the assessment and the personalized learning platform, those two pieces of the package, at a tremendously reduced cost. If the board said, we think you should do MAP, then what that would look like is an additional cost, because we'd be paying for a MAP contract over and above the assessment that what John's paying, and the package that we're getting is a full package, and the students would be taking, once again, just like last year, double the assessment.
I don't think anyone is saying that I don't know that anyone is saying we would say you have to take MAP.
Okay.
The question
Yeah, I don't
is,
think that was-
when we switch to something different that the parents don't know about and the students don't, or don't have the full piece.
That the board doesn't know about.
That the board is now hearing about for the first time. There should be some approval from the board to move forward with that, I think. And so the question is, tonight we're hearing about it. So what we would normally do is have a discussion and at the next meeting, approve it. So I think the question is there any downside about that before moving forward with something, right?
No, because it wouldn't, it doesn't.
Is that your question?
Yeah, it doesn't impact because we're gonna get the program because it's part of the curriculum, and Mr. Jonak is gonna get the iReady because he's interested in the personalized learning. So what you're saying is that next time we're together, then you would be approving the K-8 students to take the iReady assessment instead of the MAP. Is that
Well,
what
I
you're
think it's that, and then also just making it an acknowledgement that we are moving from one thing to another.
Right.
And the second piece is to let the families know. Because parents, we know, the kids talk about the way they do their testing.
Yeah.
I think it's just extraordinarily important that we also share, so now the board's hearing it. Now we have to share that with the parents. And all of the elements, the things you're telling us now, I think is critical to tell the parent. Like, hey, guess what? There'll be less test taking time.
Well-
But it's tied to, all of the things you were saying here. So I think that's the piece. It's like, there's a lot of work going on over here to get this done. It's just as critical to have it officially approved by the board and then shared with the parents and the family so people know. You know what I mean? So I don't think anyone's saying, we would say you can't use MAP. I think it's
Yeah,
the
the other
process.
important, I think that the other important thing that works in our favor is that the students last year in K-5 took the assessment, so parents got both the iReady assessment results and the MAP results that they're used to seeing. So that's a benefit for the K-5 experience is the fact that the parents had this and talked about it for a year with the teachers, and the students have a year behind them. The big, I guess the more significant change would be the 6-8. Because this is
Nadine, I'm just gonna jump in here for a second. I have no problem that this seems like a wonderful thing, but this, to me, is the same thing as the student recognition, or not the student, yeah, the class ranking. The high school came to us and said, hey, we've been having all these discussions about class ranking, hey, we want to eliminate class ranking, and they just dropped it on us. I feel the same way today. If you guys have been talking about maybe moving to this I-ready assessment in your informal meetings, and with your meetings with the other administrators, and with your meetings with the principals and so forth, why at some point in some meeting before today have we not heard about it? Okay, that's my frustration. You've dropped it on me today. You expect me to make it's a fine decision. If it's gonna save us money and it assesses the same, well, why not do it? Okay, it's fine. But you're dropping it on me here at this meeting. It frustrates me as a board member when information is given to me on a need-to-know basis, okay? I needed to know this a couple months ago when you guys first brought up, when you guys first found out about iReady. Why didn't we hear about it, okay?
I absolutely hear what you're saying. I understand, Mr. Armstrong. I guess the decision to do one over the other is really new. That's really something that we've just decided quite recently.
Well, even with a potential switch, why weren't we notified?
I understand.
Okay, that's all I don't need to know everything we do, but, I mean, you were talking about changing map assessment. We've been doing map assessments for the entire time I've been a board member, and now you want me to do I-ready? Okay, fine, I'm not against it, but you have to inform me better than this.
Right, I
Okay.
understand.
Yeah, and that's part of why I'm saying, well, okay, so now we're hearing about this, we're hearing about it for the first time, so I'm sure there's other people that are hearing about it for the first time. So to take a board action on it at the next meeting or at
Or
the
to just
next
assume it's
meeting.
okay to move forward with.
Yes, exactly.
I'm not
That's
comfortable
what
with
it
that.
is. It's not, I don't think there's any discussion that someone's gonna say, you have to use MAP, you have to. And I'm hearing what you're saying in terms of the benefits of it, as we heard from, but it's just, when it's only the administration or used for, and then other people don't know, that's where,
We don't want to be in the situation where we make the board feel like they don't have all the information or that they are kept out of the loop. So, just so we don't get into this situation, would you like, let's say, for example, we're going to go with the, we're going to start to test our students for the second year with the K-5 and for the first year with the 6-8. You'd like to hear about progress, maybe once a semester?
well,
twice a
I
year?
would say, what, and I don't mean to be pointing at you, what you guys did with talking about the report card, you've come to us 3 times, which means you've come to the community 3 times with, here's what we want to do, here's what we're doing, and here's where we are, and then we're still going to be talking more and more and more. And you're gathering information, you're talking to more parents, you're talking to, that's what we're talking about. If all of a sudden you come and say, this is what we're doing because we want to do this assessment and we're already doing it, there hasn't been any discussion. So I don't think that there's just what Gary was saying. It's not like this, I think that plan, the way that you guys did I think that is
Would
a
be-
really good
We
way.
should have been doing that for
Yes.
this topic as well.
Yes.
And certainly moving forward, particularly since this is going to be new for the junior high.
Absolutely.
So seeing you 3 times in the year to make sure that you're aware of, and in addition to that, as I said, the decision to forego one assessment over the other, and the decision to consolidate our assessments, that's, we've talked about that with teachers, and we've talked about that with parents, and no one's, and you know this, you said, no one's happy with the amount of assessments that we're giving our students. So we're always thinking about what's best for our kids and what's best for, what meets the needs of our students. So the idea of, you know what, let's make a choice. To be honest with you, that's kind of new. In terms of our progress and our journey throughout this year, yes.
That's the
We have been
piece.
3 times
That's
this
the
year
piece.
talking to you about, we are giving 2 assessments now, and here's the difference between the data, and here's how they correlate, and here's how they align, and this is how we can work with it. That's what you would have wanted.
I think that's what
Yes, it's
we're
exactly
saying.
what I would want.
We want to know, because,
Then maybe we could even have made it an actionable item tonight also, after discussion, and got you to move forward quicker.
right.
Okay,
And
that's,
even maybe the same thing with the report carding system, but,
Correct.
whatever. But it's that flow of information, because, we are not educators, but we respond to the community. And so if all of a sudden something new happens, everybody goes, wait, I didn't know about this. Now, I'm not saying that some group didn't know about it. It's just when you're, and we as parents, we're kind of busy sometimes, and we know that there's assessments and whatever. But all of a sudden, if there's like this new thing, all of a sudden you'd be like, well, wait, when did this happen? And so to have a couple of attempts at it, I think is just much more helpful. And I will just say again, the way the report card thing came. So there's like this is what we're thinking about doing, and this is how we're gonna pilot it, and this is where we're gonna go. And then, so the more you share with us here, I think the word gets out. So
I appreciate that, thank you, Alex.
that's all, I think that's all we're saying, so, I think.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other
nope.
questions? Okay, so then we'll also put this as an action item for the next meeting and. Okay, you two got something else to do?
Do we? Oh, wait.
You want to do the financials?
Yeah, the financial statement.
Thank you very much.
Have a nice night.
Okay, the next item is the presentation of monthly financial statements.
All right, we have the April financial statements for your review tonight. So during the month of April, we received about $415,000 from the state. $120,000 of that was for our evidence-based funding. And then the remaining state payments were for the second quarter categoricals and grants. And then there were $226,000 of fiscal year 19 payments vouchered and not released. And most of that was for the third quarter mandated categoricals. In the education and tort funds, we received $263,000 of fiscal year 19 payments, and there were about $75,000 vouchered but not paid. And revenues were just slightly below prior year averages. In the O&M fund, revenues again are slightly below prior year averages. And then in the transportation fund, we received the second quarter payment in the amount of $152,000. And the state vouchered the third quarter in the same amount, $152,000. In terms of expenditures, in the ed fund, they're comparable to the prior year average. The O&M fund was 71.97% spent, and last year it was 69.07% spent at this time. And then transportation fund expenditures are comparable to last year. So we also have investments of about $10.8 million. Our investment balances are starting to go down a little bit as we need to use those funds to pay bills. And then in May and June, we start receiving tax money, so some of that will begin to trend up. And then activity funds and food service reports are attached as well. Does anyone have questions? Okay.
Thank you. The next item is the summer facility projects update.
Okay. So I just wanted to give you a quick summary of what's going on in terms of our capital projects and buildings and grounds projects so far for this summer. So at the high school, the ADA compliant lab stations and the lockers for the boys and girls PE locker rooms have been ordered, and we're looking at delivery and installation towards the end of July for both of those. The gymnasium partition curtain has been ordered, and we should receive that in about 8 weeks. At the junior high, carpet replacement will be taking place soon in those 4 classrooms that are slated for that. At Manning, the new cafeteria lunch tables that are much needed are scheduled for delivery at the beginning of August. The side light panel and entry door for the rear gym entrance is being ordered. And PO is in process for the interior masonry wall repair. At Miller School, Mike's still working on final specifications for rebuilding the asphalt path from the parking lot to the back student entrance. And at South School, Mike is getting proposals to repair the masonry retaining wall at the Grant Street entrance. And then Mike, myself, Nadine, and the whole tech department have been heavily involved in the district phone system. It's taken quite a bit of time, a lot of meetings, and we're moving forward with that. We also met with all the secretaries to go over some of the phone setup and what some of the information that parents will receive, when they call in, what's that gonna sound like, where a call's gonna get routed and things like that. So, and we're supposed to have that completed before the start of the school year.
Kim, will the phone numbers change?
No, they'll be the same.
All, like, absentee lines and all that too?
I believe so. I think all that stuff should change, should stay the same. There might be a few little tweaks when they go through, when you do the automated message. There might be a little bit more automated messaging, so you get right to the same person. But the consultant and the person from Midco has been working with everybody to get so that we have a kind of a uniform process throughout all the schools and some standard messaging things. So
Could I ask that, one of the things that went in, you're probably already doing it, but the website pages, that they say that, like if there is for instance, like, if your kid's sick, all of a sudden you wake up and you're like fumbling around or whatever, and you're looking for the absentee line. If there is anything different.
okay, have them updated.
Yeah,
Okay. Yep.
that's what I'm getting at, if
Yep.
there's anything different on the pages and stuff.
Yep. All right. Yeah, we will do that. Okay.
Okay, anything else on that?
No,
Any questions?
that's it.
Okay. The next item, certificate of excellence.
Okay, and I just wanted to make the board aware that, each year our comprehensive annual financial report, which is that, 150-page bound document that we submit for our audit, we send that to the Association of School Business Officials International to review that, and we received the Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting for the June 30, 28 fiscal year, and that's the 13th year that the district has received that award. And it just shows, the nice thing about that report is it's got a lot of great information about the district, about the community, and it was a very useful tool if we want to issue bonds and stuff. So if people really want to understand the financial aspects of our district, that's the report that they use. So just wanted to make people aware that we did receive that recognition again this year.
That's very impressive.
And thank you
Yes.
very much, Kim, for that. That's fantastic, and thank you. All right, the next item, bus routes for 2019-2020 school year.
Okay, and so when we did our contract renewal, we did mention that we were looking at our bus routes, and for a number of reasons. One, look at efficiency. Safety was also probably the major concern for the district. Around that time when we were renewing the contract, there had been some accidents where vehicles had passed stopped arms for school buses on some busy roads, and there were some fatalities. And so when we were having discussions, we were also looking at our bus routes because we haven't changed them since I've been in the district, and so that's 9 years, and I'm sure they weren't changed prior to that. We get sometimes a lot of parent calls wanting, special stops and things like that. So we really wanted to look at our routes for efficiency, safety, and things like that. And then just to see, kind of have a standardized thing, making sure that, we were having, following best practices. So when we met with Westway, you know, they were also highly concerned about the stops that we have on 55th Street and on Cass Avenue. And so they looked at the routing and were able to, I think we just have one stop still kind of on 55th Street because we just can't change that. But moving those stops off of those streets for safety for our students. In the process, we were also able to look at the dual language route as well, and we're going to be able to, without adding any additional cost, reconfigure our dual language routes for next year as well. So one of the things we have the attached, there are the current routes and then the proposed routes for each area. And if you look at the Manning Area 1, which is in Oakwood, there are, you know, quite a few stops that were removed. And some of them, when you look at the addresses, you don't really realize how many stops we have and how close they are together until you plot them out on the map. So this should, again, help the efficiency of the bus routes. I mean, some of the stops are like almost right next to each other. So, and then probably where their major changes is in what's called Manning Area 2 and 3, where the bus was stopping at every corner on each street, you know, Des Moines, Dallas, Richmond, and Quincy. And now we've moved those stops to where people will have to can walk a block in either direction. And one of the things that I did, and my staff and I, we walked those stops to see how long it would took, what that would be like, and made sure that stops were no more than, you know, 0.2 to 0.3 miles for a kid. So you will have some parents in that Manning Route Area 2 and 3 that had maybe a stop right outside their home. They're gonna have to walk a block. But again, moving, that helped us eliminate stops off of 55th Street, and it also increases the efficiency instead of stopping at every single corner. And then, again, Manning Area 4, when you look at that, a few of the stops have been eliminated, but again, some of them were kind of redundant with multiple stops in one area. And then Miller Area 3 and 4, again, has been consolidated, again, for efficiency. So this is one of the items, you know, we kind of talked about. Routes will be, the times are pretty comparable to what they already are experiencing. And again, safety is probably the biggest component of the changes. So I wanted to present that to you, see if the board had any, you know, reservations about this. Obviously, we would be communicating this information out, sending something out to parents now. Send it out, you know, each month until we do this. We can have, you know, these maps available at registration. We obviously post all the lists and stuff so we can get that, you know, communication out to parents frequently between now and the start of the school year.
Well, I'm all for student safety. I mean, if seeing all those stops on Cass Avenue and knowing what's happened in recent months, I'm you know, very much on board with getting those stops off of Cass Avenue and making it much safer for the students. I just think that's a very good solution there.
Kim, can you explain what you mean by the dual language route? And is that shown here?
It's not shown in here. So what's gonna happen, the students that, from Manning that are already walkers, they're going to walk to Manning, and one of the stops will be Manning to shuttle them. The other ones, and they're still kind of working out that route, but it should take no more than 30 minutes. And so some of the dual language students that are up in Oakwood may ride a Miller bus. That might be a stop for them to Miller. And then it'll be kind of in that South School area where they'll kind of have their own bus to go through. And so that's like the South School area, They'll stop at Manning, then go to Miller. We're still not sure if they're going to go all the way up into Oakwood, or part of the Miller bus will pop into Oakwood for that. So, our router is out on vacation, and they're still working on that, but they've studied that, and they've assured us that that can be less than right around a 30-minute route. And then that will facilitate getting those kids to the program, instead of, sometimes there will be problems with the buses arrive late, the transfers and stuff, and so that kind of eliminates that without having to add a 5th bus.
And how often do we look at areas that aren't covered by a bus route, to sort of review the concentration of kids? Like specifically, I can say that where I live, there's no bus route that goes through that takes kids to the elementary schools, and if we're zoned for Manning, but kids would have to cross Naperville to get to school if they were walking. If you're in the dual language program, you would have to cross Cass.
Okay.
So I just am curious if we look at those pockets of the community where isn't currently a bus route that's taking students.
Right, so we have hazardous routes, and right now that's like Ogden and,
The railroad tracks.
right. So in the walking distance is 1.5 miles. So unless we deem that as a hazardous route, that's not gonna change. There's not gonna be busing service for that, if I'm answering your question correctly.
Yeah.
Did I understand? Yeah.
Okay.
The other side of that.
It would make me nervous to send my daughter walking across Naperville Avenue. Do you know, that would be the route, so I don't know how we deem what's a dangerous route or not, but I'm just gonna put that
Yeah,
out
that
there.
has
that's-
to be, yeah, that has to go to the state for approval.
Okay.
That's something that, we could certainly look at. I mean, typically, like, again, railroad tracks, probably a 4-lane road, like Ogden Avenue, some of those things are criteria. I don't know if Naperville Road would meet the criteria.
Okay.
Well, Kim, just as a thought, I'm sorry, Maria, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was just gonna say, well, there's
there-
I'm not exactly I don't know exactly where area you're talking about, but there is a crossing guard
Right,
at
on,
one place.
right.
Would there be a need for maybe a crossing guard? I'm trying to think about what
Yeah,
area
no,
you're
that's
talking
an
about.
interesting solution. So we're, I don't wanna get in, we
Yeah,
don't
I'm-
spend too much time here, but in between Ogden and Naperville Road, if you're, east of Cass, there's a pocket there that there's no bus service. And if you're going to Miller, you have to cross Cass. If you're going to Manning, you have to cross, Naperville.
But you'd only be
There
going to
might be
Miller
a
in the dual language. Technically, you'd only be going to Miller if you're in the dual language. So
Exactly.
my comment was actually be, Kim, if there's a Miller bus that's going into Oakwood, is there a possibility it could make one sweep into that area that she's talking about and maybe make one stop somewhere? I don't know how many dual language kids are there. I don't know what the, I'm just throwing out an idea.
Right, well, yeah, we'll look at we'll get that list together and look at that.
There's
So-
definitely a handful.
Well, I'm
I think
just
it'd
saying,
be
if
worth
there was
looking
one,
at.
I mean, if the bus is
Okay.
coming out of Oakwood, could it swing one block in and pick somebody up there, right? I mean, make one stop, yeah. I don't know.
Language bus is
Right.
obviously the
Right.
most difficult to route. so.
Right.
Not to stray too far from the subject right now, but overall bus safety, this would only be if the board wants to move forward with this, but Kevin and I had met last year with the village. Unfortunately, we wound up supplying or having a person stand at that, where I'm talking about Norfolk and Linden. The village had proposed some ideas about maybe extending some concrete for the buses or something. We now know that the buses can't pull into the alley, so we really don't have any other solution. So does the board want, Kevin and maybe myself, I'd be happy to, as Buildings and Ground, to approach the village again and see about getting that concrete added, or whatever we could do, have another conversation with them is all I'm saying, to do something about Norfolk and Linden. Otherwise, it's just gonna be the same thing. We're gonna have to put another adult out there all year again. I mean, I'm not against that. Okay, I'm just.
Not against having both.
I'm not against having both, that's correct. I just know that those buses, need to get pushed down the street a little bit somehow, if that's if that's a feasible solution. So I don't know how the board feels about that, that's all.
Definitely. I
Please.
would say
Yes,
definitely. Anything
yes.
that we can do to, that's, I mean, that was part of the thing about bringing up about the crossing guard. And while we're on that, and we're talking about buses, what is this current situation about the alley behind Manning with the
We're just simply
mirror?
can't do it, can't do
Yeah,
it.
can't do
No,
that.
the mirror.
Oh, the mayor,
Oh.
they,
I don't know, I haven't seen, I haven't looked.
they didn't
Yeah,
put up a new
remember we
mirror.
talked about that?
They put up signage that, you know, you need to stop before the walk and
Right.
look for pedestrians. So the signs are new, but they didn't put up
A mirror, yeah.
a mirror board.
Could
Can
we
we?
have,
I know I know in the past, the trucks that use the alley
Right.
knock the mirror off the wall. So it ends up being, you know, replacing the mirror every so often.
So,
There's gotta be a place we can
No, it's not.
put a mirror that won't get knocked off by a truck mirror.
Well, you've got to put it so high, nobody sees it.
so it sounds
Yeah,
like
but-
we want to look at it further, and maybe we could get, if you guys are a special committee that works on that before the start of the school year.
Let's-
that we
just
could get a
revisit it.
fuller
I definitely want to revisit
I'm happy to
that.
revisit it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything for bus safety is, yes. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a question. So kind of the opposite. Do we, I know this would be a lot of work. Do we ever look at the routes and say, you know, no one gets on at this stop every year? Now,
Yeah.
I realize as I'm saying that, that's a crazy amount of work.
Right. No, we actually had that conversation.
Okay.
Whether to, you know, do the routes by where students live each year. And in conversations with them, decided to have just standard stops, and all the schools will have the same stops. And that it makes it easier too on their drivers. It's just kind of that routine piece.
Okay, I would agree, because if you change them every year, that would be
Right,
probably
it
crazy,
gets-
especially if
yes.
someone moves in.
Right.
But is there ever a time when you kind of look and, like, you know, you've got this whole.
Well, yeah, and
is this-
they, if you look at the thing where somewhere there's numbers, there's
Yeah.
like some of that is, it's like kids on the bus or whatever. So they do look at that one in the
Okay.
routing, because we give them every student and where they live, and so they look at that.
Yeah, okay. I
Yeah.
figured you did.
So within the circle is the number of students that get on that bus, when we're looking at this document? Pop up, sorry.
Yeah, but that's again not for one particular school. So we've got, you know, multiple routes running on
Well,
some of these.
Sure, that's elementary,
So,
junior high, and
yes.
high school.
Right,
Gotcha.
yep,
Well, I'm sure you'll keep us
yes, okay.
updated on this.
All right, so we'll get a communication out then, you know, next week, or right after the 4th of July, and for that, so, okay?
And thinking about registration, that's something that's already handed out. I do
Right,
recall.
yes, yeah, but we can have a visual
I'm-
for everybody, so they can
That's,
see it and.
okay, any other questions on that? Okay, then we'll move to action item. The first one is the SACID lease agreement revised.
So we approved the SACID lease earlier this year for next year, and the total was gonna be $81,000. They wanted to adjusted some space, and so the new lease is gonna bring revenue in of $98,000 for the district. So I just wanted to have you approve the revised lease.
Okay, any comments or questions? The chair will entertain a motion to approve the amended SACID lease for the 2019-2020 school year as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mrs. Coyle?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mrs. Stromeyer?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, motion carried. Okay, approval of resolution of DuPage West Cook Governing Board approving proposed amendments to the DuPage West Cook Regional Special Education Association intergovernmental agreement.
this meeting.
And this is, we belong to SACID, and this is part of our intergovernmental agreement with SACID. These are some changes that are being proposed, and John, I think you were at the
I was at the meeting.
meeting.
The DuPage-West Cook regional, or excuse me, the DuPage-West Cook intergovernmental agreement is, SACID is, I forget how many districts, but the DuPage-West Cook is 92 districts. And this is a legal standing discussion for DuPage-West Cook in that they are able to work as a intergovernmental agency and support all these programs. And SACID's part of it, and there's other cooperatives that are part of it as well. So it's like the cooperative of the cooperatives. And it just needs to, literally, we just need to approve it based on due to some changes in legal status of their organization to make it work better for all the member districts. I can't go into much more detail than that because it's way beyond what I thoroughly understand or any of us would.
Hey, well, are there any questions for John?
Sorry.
Okay. The chair will entertain a motion to ratify the resolution of DuPage-West Cook Governing Board approving proposed amendments to the DuPage-West Cook Regional Special Education Association Intergovernmental Agreement as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Armstrong,
Yes.
Mrs. Coyle,
Yes.
Mr. Rudy,
Yes.
Mrs. Stromeyer,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton.
Yes.
Thank you.
Approval of lunch fees for 2019-2020 school year.
Okay. At the February 26th board meeting where you approved the school fees, I did let the board know that we did not have all the information we needed to be able to know what was happening with our lunch fees. And so we participate in the National School Lunch Program, and as part of that, we have to comply with Page Lunch Equity, which is a requirement of the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act of 2010. So anyway, the calculations related to that indicate that we have to increase our meal prices for paid meals by 10 cents over every meal category. And the reason for that is that the revenue generated from paid meals needs to be comparable to what's generated from our free and reduced lunch price meals. So anyway, that information is there, just letting you know that's what we need to change that to.
Any questions?
If we had an increase in revenue from our meals that are not provided from free or reduced lunch, whether that's like a la carte or more students buying those meals, would that satisfy it without? No. Okay. Thank you.
Per meal price.
Yeah, no.
Okay. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the lunch fees for the 2019-2020 school year as presented.
So moved.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Coyle,
Yes.
Mr. Rudy,
Yes.
Mrs. Stromeyer,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong,
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the next one is approval of authorization to pay additional June bills for fiscal year 2019.
So again, we have one meeting during the month. We haven't received all the bills, and we definitely want to get as much in that pertains to fiscal year 29 paid out of fiscal year 29. So this just authorizes us to get those paid by the end of the year.
The chair will entertain a motion to authorize and direct the treasurer to pay any additional bills received in June 2019 that have been budgeted for the current fiscal year as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Rudy,
Yes.
Mrs. Stromeyer,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong,
Yes.
Mrs. Coyle,
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Okay, approval of tentative 2019-2020 budget.
All right, good evening. We have the 2019-2020 tentative budget for your review tonight. And all right, here we go. So first, we'll start out with a look at our revenues by source. We have property taxes, other local sources, state sources, federal sources, and we also look at them by all funds, and then the operating funds, which are the Ed, Operations and Maintenance Fund, IMRF Social Security, and tort funds and transportation fund. So when we look at our revenues by source, property taxes are the largest component of our revenues. In the operating funds, it's 84.4% of our revenue. State sources are 7.71%. Those are things like our evidence-based funding model, revenue, and also some of our state grants, National School Lunch Program, the state portion of that. Then federal sources, again, National School Lunch Program, and then some of our federal grants like Title I, Title II, the IDEA grants. So total revenues in all funds, $28.4 million, and then the operating funds, $27.1 million. And then our revenues are based on our tax levy CPI of 2.1% for the 2018 levy and the CPI of 1.9% for the 2019 levy. And again, property taxes are our largest source of revenue. Interest rates have increased, and so from the 5-year plan that I presented earlier this year, there is some additional interest income reflected in this budget. And then right now, we're just in the process of receiving some of our grant allocations. So what allocations that we've received are budgeted in at the preliminary FY20 levels. If we haven't received our allocations yet, I've used our FY19 initial allocations. So we anticipate that there will be some changes to that in our final budget. And then right now, the evidence-based funding of about $3.1 million is at the FY19 level because we have not been notified what our FY20 funding will be. And then the next thing, we look at our expenditures by object. And again, that's comprised of our salaries and benefits, purchased services, supplies, capital outlay, our capital projects, other objects, tuition, termination benefits, and non-capital equipment. So for all funds, our expenditures are $31.9 million, and in our operating funds, $29.1 million. And when you look at, again, the largest expenditure category for the district, that's obviously our salary and benefits because we're a people organization. And for the operating funds, that is 74.39% of our expenditures. The expenditures are based on salaries per contract for the teachers, and then we are in the process of negotiating WESPA and WCMA. The medical insurance is budgeted at rates, our current rates for half the year, and then 5% increases are estimated for the remainder of the year. Our O&M fund includes the projects identified in our 5-year capital plan. Some of those are the district phone system replacement that we've been talking about, the lunchroom tables, masonry work, and boiler pipe patching at Manning, the rebuilding of the asphalt path from the parking lot to the student entrance at Miller, some minor masonry work at South, carpet replacement in 4 rooms at the junior high, and then lab stations, ADA compliant locker, and gymnasium partition curtain at the high school. And so the capital projects funding also includes projects to utilize the remaining working cash bond funds, and we'll be transferring funds from the working cash fund into the O&M and then the capital projects for those. We have not identified those projects yet, But that's something that we'll be coming back, having future conversations with. But right now, I'm budgeting for those expenditures, and then we can have the approvals later. And then hopefully we won't have to amend the budget later and go through this process again. And then for the Fire Prevention and Safety Fund, that includes using up the remaining bond balance in that. And then to start on some of the projects that were identified in our 10-year life safety survey. And then we will also need additional funding to complete those projects. We'll have more conversations about that at a later date and how we're going to be able to fund those. When we look at our revenue and expenditures by fund, and compare our expenditures in several of the funds are greater than our revenues. So we're projecting a $1.5 million deficit in the Ed Fund, $60,000 in the tort, $261,000 in O&M. IMRF and Social Security will have a surplus, and then Transportation Fund about $188,000. So overall, $1.9 million deficit in our operating funds. And then the debt service fund, $10,000, that's where we pay our bonds. We have sufficient fund balance to cover that, and we also have the ability to do that supplemental tax levy, so that may change as we go forward. Capital projects, again, we're using up all of our remaining bond funds, so we have the $1.3 million there to spend, but it's just that we're not taking in any revenues, it's just transfers of money. Working cash, we'll have a surplus of $5,000, which is roughly what I'm estimating for interest income. And then again, we're going to use up all of our remaining balance in the Fire Prevention and Safety Fund. So we have the funds there, we need to use them, so that's not an issue. Where we need to start focusing, though, is on the Ed Fund and working to have our revenues and expenditures start to align. And again, now we're looking at fund balance, so I've projected what our beginning fund balance in each of the funds would be, and then the ending fund balance, and again, the net change, which again is those surpluses or deficits in each category. One of the things, our revenue projections are conservative, and typically they have been pretty spot on over the years. Our expenditures are based on our anticipated needs. One of the things we do need to start doing is aligning our spending with CPI increases and making sure that we're meeting that practice, at least the expenditures that we can control. Some things we can't control, and some of the increases are greater than CPI, and that's for some of our contracted services. But where we can control expenditures, we need to start making sure that we're focusing on that, because we did have a deficit last year and we need to make sure we don't continue that trend. So the sooner we can make changes, the better off we'll be. The 2019-2020 budget is aligned with board and district goals to provide educational services to the students and families we serve. We do have planned deficit spending in the O&M fund, and we do have sufficient balance to cover the projects that we're doing. One of the things that we've been looking at is we do have quite a bit of capital projects out there, and we do not have enough funding to cover all of those projects. So we cannot, we cannot exhaust all the funds in the O&M fund to cover all of those, and we've talked about those previously in those presentations. So we will need to start looking at some other funding mechanisms for those as well. And then the life safety and working cash fund spending for capital projects. Funds can only be used for these purposes in those. And then adjustments will be made to the final budget and as updated information is received. One of the couple things that aren't projected in here is if any property tax legislation is approved or any pension reform legislation. So obviously if any of those factors happen, we'll be coming back and having other discussions and making changes. Then the public display budget will be presented to the board, as was presented tonight. And then it will be on display at the administrative offices at 133 South Grant for tomorrow morning through the time that we have the actual budget hearing. We have to publish a legal notice at least 30 days prior to the public hearing. We'll be publishing that on August 7th. And we have to adopt our budget by September 30th. So our budget meeting, hearing will be September 24th, 2019 at 7 p.m. at the Village Hall here. Anybody have questions?
No, I don't have any questions. I know the deficit is a problem. I guess we really just have to focus on watching that CPI, making sure we don't exceed CPI.
Correct.
I ask this question all the time, and I know you don't have the answer, but in all of the meetings that you go to, is there any update on these property tax freeze legislations or the pension reform legislation? And I ask that all the
Yeah.
time.
No.
Because it could really adversely affect us.
Right, no, it's just something that kind of hangs
just hanging
out
down there? Okay.
and, you know, for people to be aware of, but
Right.
not really sure what's gonna happen with
And
it.
obviously, if it happens, it affects all schools, not just us, but it is such a
Right.
big chunk, so.
Yeah, we won't be the only one having, you know, lots of conversations and having to take some probably drastic measures.
And I know I ask it all the time, so I apologize for
No,
that, but
that's
I
fine.
I figured if you knew when you know something, you'll tell us. Not that we won't be hearing about it, but, okay, any other questions on the budget? Okay.
All right, thanks.
Did you have anything else on that, Kim?
No, and there's more detailed information if, you know, people want to read the board memo that's attached as well. So.
Okay. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the tentative 2019-2020 budget as presented, and that said budget be available for public inspection in the district's business office from June 26, 2019 until board adoption on Tuesday, September 24th, 2019.
So moved.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Stromeyer?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes?
Mrs. Coyle?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Thank you.
Then the last item for approval is the approval of board agreements. So I will say, first of all, I am very happy that our board did partake in a board self-evaluation workshop on May 21st, 2019. And I say that because I know a lot of boards don't do that, and we just recently did that. And what it is for the members of the community is that the board gets together with a representative of the Illinois Association of School Boards, and we talk about how the board functions and where we're going and what our beliefs are in that. And so we specifically planned this for shortly after the recent board election. So we historically have been doing these every couple of years, so it was nice to do that. So what everybody has in front of them are is the board, well, we used to call them board agreements. Now they have suggested we use the word board protocols. So we have in front of everybody the May 21st board protocols that we all had discussed. We also have the letter from our IASB rep, Dee Molinaire, and our CUSD 201 board, our legacy to the community. So for tonight's board meeting, one of the things is to talk, just mention the fact that we've done this. This is something that the board does in closed session. It is part of the, one of the requirements to have one of these sessions with the IASB representative. And Kevin Carey, the superintendent, was there as well. So tonight we will approve the board agreements, and just if anybody has any comments or questions, or we post these on our website too, and we've posted them in the past, and after this we will post it again. So
I think one thought I had that was, I'm happy that was included in the board docs, was in case the community wants to look at some of these documents, is the legacy We discussed what we wanted our legacy to be. And that was an interesting exercise.
It's interesting, we've never had this attached to it before. So I guess I have the question, it's up here, do we want to add that to the website where we put our board agreements? Board protocols, I should say now.
Sure.
I don't see why not.
Have any?
More transparency.
Well,
Right.
that's why I'm saying, we have never had that before, but it is here as an item, so,
Sure.
okay? Again, I think it's wonderful that our board does take the time. It's a 3-hour evening, but it's a good exercise for any board to do, so I'm happy that we do that, so. Okay. The board will entertain a motion to approve the board protocols, previously called agreements, as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
Mr. Armstrong,
Yes.
Mrs. Coyle,
Yes.
Mr. Rudy,
Yes.
Mrs. Stromeyer,
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, superintendent's report.
A couple items in my report. First, again, just a reminder to our school families that registration for the 2019-2020 school year will take place at Westmont Junior High School on August 6, 2019, from 2 o'clock p.m. until 8 o'clock p.m. And all families will register at the junior high on August 6th, regardless of the age of their children or the schools their children attend. All families will need approved residency at the time of registration, and registration information will be available on the district website after July 1st. And then the other item.
Kevin, I have a quick question about that.
Yes.
Have we made any movement on being able to provide digital proof of residency?
No, we don't make copies anymore. We do make digital copies.
Okay.
Of what's, and I don't know if the board remembers the conversation we had after last was that, there is a benefit to families
Absolutely.
coming together. And so we really haven't really pursued the completely change over to electronic.
I was just thinking of some of the steps involved in registration, if there was some way to have some boxes checked before you walked in.
That's something we could look into.
I will tell you, as a board member who has helped at the last 10,
It's efficient.
it has gotten so much better. Before, there used to be lines out the door.
Sure.
Obviously, there are certain ways to make things more efficient, but it
Right.
certainly has gotten better.
Will we
So,
revisit John's thought before next year, like maybe in the spring or the summer? Just the thought of maybe just another discussion about moving things electronic. I think it might be beneficial just to talk about that one more time. Because I know some things have already been moved. We kind of have a partial system.
Right.
Where we do some things online, but not that last step.
right.
So we move more to that direction. I think it might be good to discuss it one more time, if that's what the board wants to do.
To dovetail on that, my reason I brought it up is thinking about the idea of using those captive audiences to gain information and responses. It'd be nice to be able to spend more time during that process doing that than paperwork.
Oh, okay, so you're only talking about that piece, not the whole registration
Not the whole
thing.
registration, but at least whatever pieces can be done ahead of time electronically, and then a final kind of sign off in
Right.
person, which would allow more time during that process to engage with the parents and get the feedback that we're always looking for.
You know, one thing I would suggest, to the extent we can do this, more reminders to the parents to sign up before that date. And I know we do it, but I would say more and more and more, because that is a cog in the wheel on those days that people, like, they come in and then they haven't signed up or done the thing. So any amount that we can do to add to any of that. we
Communicate the
do.
need to do that.
Yeah, just keep doing, more, just more. And even, it's summertime, people are on vacation or whatever, so. Other than that. Yeah, I'm sorry, John, I thought you were saying to not have
No, not a
people
completely
come.
electronic.
You're just talking about
registration.
that one
Submitting
thing.
documents
Streamline.
Yeah,
Use
okay.
use the time that.
Got it.
Use the FaceTime we have.
Yeah.
Appropriately.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that's great. So, yeah, if we can look into that.
And then the other item I have is, it's hard to believe, but November will be here before we know it, and the 2019 Joint Conference for the Illinois Association of School Business Officials, Association of School Administrators, and School Board members is November 22nd and through the 24th, and right now is registration for pre-conference workshops. So if you haven't, let Rima know, if you could please let Rima know so that she can get you registered for the pre-conference workshops. Those do fill up quickly, and some may even be closed already, but if you have identified those pre-conference workshops, please let Rima know.
I will share that, interestingly, this year they have some really new, interesting topics. Sometimes they keep doing the same topics over and over, and it's not a criticism, but that this year there's some new, and there's interesting ones. So if you want to get signed up, ASAP, so, thank you. Okay, anything else
That's it.
on that? Okay, board reports. The first thing is happy birthday to Judy. It's her birthday today.
Thank you.
And whenever there's a
Happy
board
birthday,
member
Judy.
that has a birthday on it.
Tough turning 35.
Yeah. Second thing, I know people are very aware of this, but our own Joe Donovan, who is a graduate of Westmont High School, is currently playing in the College Baseball World Series. I understand we are not winning at this moment on Game 2, but it's the best of 3, and they won last night. So congrats to Joe Donovan and the whole Donovan family for representing our school so well. Are there any other board reports?
You go ahead.
No, go ahead.
You go for first, go ahead.
I had the pleasure of being involved in a beautification project at Miller School last Friday, and just want to thank the parents and a great, hardworking group of Boy Scouts that came to help out as well. And we were able to put a new garden in the front of the building and address some other things around the property to help clean up and brighten up and make it look wonderful. And ostensibly, it was the driving force is the fact that Lynn Egler, the school administrative assistant, is going to be there year-round now and would like to see more flowers. So she's going to miss her own yard during the summer. So we did some work to help her out with that, and she's going to be caring for it and using it as a teaching garden with the garden club. And also upcoming more projects at Miller with Boy Scouts and hopefully more parents involved too.
Is that that's the corner right in front of the building?
Yeah, that square, couple small squares, the peace pole and then the sign bed.
Great.
Yep.
Gary, did you have?
Yeah, I just had, wanted to just take a couple minutes. I can't express enough gratitude to the teachers that take our students on these trips, whether it just be to Springfield or Washington or the overseas trips that we've been on recently. I know that my family's enjoyed, my daughter's enjoyed personally. The teachers that are organizing these trips and go out on these trips, particularly outside the school year, are paying it out of their own pocket, and they are there to educate your students and give them an experience that you couldn't believe. When we were in France, the teachers that we went with, we walked over 58 miles, 140,000 steps. We went up 119 stories in the 7 days that we were there. I know it sounds like a lot, but folks, what the kids saw, they saw the Eiffel Tower, they climbed the Arc de Triomphe, they saw the Mona Lisa, we marched through Monaco, we walked across a Roman aqueduct, and we sat in a Roman Colosseum. And the teachers did all this with the safety of your children in mind. They were constantly there, constantly aware of where all the children were, what they were doing. Not that the children didn't have free time, but the teachers definitely monitor them and have their safety and their education on their concerns at all time. I'm just going to take a personal moment here. I'd really like to thank the 3 that were on our trip. The French teacher, I know that most of the kids call her Madame, but I think I better call her Meg and Sulaco, Sue Ellen Jacobs, and then Brian Dunn. And really just 3 outstanding individuals. I know all the other teachers that go, they're all great teachers. But parents, if you get a chance, send your kids. If you get a chance to go, Go with your kids. It is the trip of a lifetime, so thank you to the teachers.
The pictures were certainly breathtaking, and you could tell that there was a lot going on.
Yeah, I can't even mention everything. It would take me way too long.
Amazing.
Okay, any other board reports? All right. Well, future meetings, one thing. The next school board meeting, July 16th, 7 o'clock at South School? Is that right?
Yes.
Yes, there's a conflict here.
Oh, okay. So the next
Yeah.
meeting will be at South School. It will not be here because of a conflict. Okay, the chair will entertain a motion to enter closed session for the purpose of discussing collective bargaining, personnel issues, and the superintendent's evaluation.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Armstrong?
Yes.
Mrs. Coyle?
Yes.
Mr. Rudy?
Yes.
Mrs. Stromeyer?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Thank you.
And there is not a vote after closed.
Okay.